All right, to everybody who is watching us and with us or listening to us in Clubhouse, LinkedIn, and also YouTube, good morning and thank you very much for joining us on Wednesday, this beautiful Wednesday morning in Japan, and it is Tuesday evening in any other part of the world. So it is it's September the 11th actually, and we have a wonderful guest today who has joined us. His name is, Jake Nalton. Uh, just a few words before I also introduce our first sponsor. I would like to say to Jake, welcome and thank you very much for agreeing to share this Wednesday morning with us, Jake. So, Jake is the principal of Milky Way, an international preschool in Funabashi, Chiba, here in, just next door to Tokyo. And Jake agreed to join us so that he can talk about Japanese nursery schools, or as they are called in other parts of the world, daycare centers for kids or preschools. So, Jake, thank you very much indeed. Please allow me to give a plug to our first sponsor, Kanchu.com, and our friend James Howell. So,
Hey,
thankfully, hey, hi,
and
James.
he spoke last week. He was
He
our
did,
speaker last
yes.
week. So check him out if you missed it, everybody.
If
Yeah.
you did, yes. So James is the representative of Kanchu.com, our first sponsor, and Kanchu.com offers bilingual services to individuals who want to buy and sell real estate in Tokyo and Yokohama. The company also does property management and investment property. And if you want to work with them, if you have a project on your mind and you need to use English, please reach out to James Howell on LinkedIn, or contact him at james@kanchu.com so that you can work on your project in either language, Japanese or English. Thank you,
James will take
James.
care of you.
Yes. And now we can dive directly into the topic, of course. But before that, Jake, could you please give us a little bit of information about you, how you came to Japan, what happened, and how come you're the principal of your nursery school? Let's go into this.
Yeah, good morning. First of all, you caught me a bit off guard when you said wonderful guest, and I think that's the first time anyone's ever referred to me as wonderful before. But yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm Jake, and I've been in Japan for 11 years now. I'm originally from Manchester in the UK. I talked about it before. I don't really have an exciting story about why I came to Japan. I studied chemistry in university, realized I'm not good at it, and needed to think of something else to do. And had a few roommates who'd lived abroad, lived in Japan, lived in China, lived in Europe, and suggested maybe it's a good way to just figure something out, go somewhere for a year, maybe try and find yourself. I don't know if that's the maybe the popular phrase, but find yourself. So I thought I'd just give another country a try. Just got a quick teaching certificate online, which that £50 teaching certificate ended up being one of the most valuable things I've ever got, because it opened a lot of doors. But yeah, I thought I'd come to Japan for a year. It's now been 11 1 year, 1 year recycles, and yeah, becoming the principal of a school was, I'll be honest with you, it came by luck in many regards. I had worked, the usual Eikaiwa route, and then me and my now wife lived in Tokyo, and I worked in different kindergartens. And when my wife was pregnant, we decided to move here in Funabashi, because this is where my wife's grandparents live. And I had to find a new job. And just so happened that there was a brand new daycare nursery opening about 300, 400 meters away from my wife's parents' house. The Milky Way, the company that I work now, was opening a brand new school. So I thought, give it a try, got the job. And it was a real big eye-opening experience, which I'm sure we'll go into more detail later, like getting into this world, working within the Japanese nursery system. And after a few months or so, I became a manager of this school. It was almost all Japanese staff with two foreign staff, one of them being me. But I was asked to be manager of the teachers and all the staff, just as like a bridge between like foreign staff, Japanese staff, and how to communicate better because I could speak Japanese. And then after a year, I was asked if I wanted to move to the current school I'm in now, which is in Moteyawata in Ichikawa, as like the vice principal. And I was quite excited to, in Japan, for a lot of English teachers, it's quite hard to climb that ladder. So I was just very excited to get a chance to move up the ladder in some respects. And after moving to this school, after a year of being the vice principal, they asked me to be the principal. And then COVID hit, which was wild for a nursery school. But yeah, it's been 5 years as principal of this school now, and it's a lot of fun.
And once more, what is your school's name?
So my school name is Milky Way International Preschool, Moteyawata.
Milky Way. I like it.
So yeah, it
Right.
was very space themed. Yeah,
Yeah,
at the start. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, good,
Yes.
good.
Well, when we talked a month or 2 months ago, the first meeting we had with you, Jake, you mentioned that also Milky Way. Well, basically, you're the first male principal there, and that there are also very few male nursery school teachers. And these are my observations too. Even though my daughter is already 11 years old and she was in nursery school a while ago, right? But back then, I remember that when she was going to the nursery school in our area, there was just one teacher, one male teacher, right? And then, so that teacher was there maybe for 6 months or so, and then he quit. We don't know the reason why, but to me, it has always like being the case that this profession is more for women and not so much for men. So there is definitely some bias there. And I wonder, so what is your take on this? Um, right,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
experience inside the field, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like in my school that I work in now, there are 3 men and 18 women.
Yeah.
The balance changes quite often. I think when you get into more international schools, I think the balance of males and females, it becomes a bit more higher for males, just because I think there's a lot of male English teachers just in Japan. But in a lot of Japanese nurseries, I think it's quite often that you'll never see a man in there. Even within my own company, I think not every school has a male teacher in it. And I think it's something that's getting better in Japan, especially with social media, TikTok and stuff. It kind of appeals to, you can kind of see the good aspects of working in a nursery.
Yeah.
Because beforehand, maybe a lot of people just thought, it's just women taking care of kids, which in
Mhm.
Japan, that's kind of traditionally what happens anyway. But especially nowadays, salaries are getting better. There's a lot of freedom to working in nurseries compared to a few years ago.
Oh,
As
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a few years ago. At least when I started in nurseries, it was quite tough. It was a lot of paperwork. Japan,
Yeah.
paperwork everywhere. Even within the nursery school, you have
Yeah.
daily reports, weekly reports, monthly reports, a report for every single child in the class. And it's
right.
not just like a
Yes.
one-line thing. You
Yes.
have to write every single thing. But it's something that actually technology has helped with a lot. Now, a lot of these diaries are done by apps. You can just copy and paste, you can put pictures in. That's actually
Right.
reduced workload a lot. And especially now that Japan is going through this boom of we need more kids, we need to
Right.
take better care of families. They've actually, as I mentioned, they've pushed up salaries for nursery teachers a lot. It's quite common that a brand new nursery teacher in Japan can earn over 300,000 yen a month starting, which
Oh,
compared
well.
to a few years ago, that would have been 210, 220.
Right.
because a lot of cities will pay for their rent as well as an
Is
incentive to.
is there a need for these types of teachers in that space?
Yeah, so the big issue has obviously, because now a lot of women are going to work,
Yeah.
rightfully so, of
Mhm.
course.
Hmm.
The necessity for a lot of nursery schools, because traditionally Japan started from kindergarten, which is maybe 3 years old. A lot of them started like pre-K, like 2-year-old classes, but now, in my school, we get a lot of requests for like, we have a 3-month-old baby, we need to go back to work. Can you take our 3-month-old baby? So the numbers of teachers to kids, whilst it's not as kind as some countries, for example, in England, it's 2 kids to 1 teacher if you're
Mhm.
zero. But in Japan, that's 3 kids to 1 teacher. But even still, a nursery school typically requires 20 to 30 staff, including like, cooks, nurses,
Right, right.
cleaning staff, part-time staff. Because nurseries are usually open 7 till 7. So you've
Mhm.
got to cover a number of
Gotcha.
shifts. Yeah.
Gotcha. That
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
wow. I'm really surprised, but I'm also really impressed. And again, we were talking about my granddaughter going to nursery
Yeah.
school, and you mentioned the reports, and I know Maya feels this too. Like they get reports like regularly, specifically
Every.
about my granddaughter,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and it's several paragraphs, and it's pictures, and you know, and they may be describing my granddaughter reacting to something and she's laughing and I
Yes.
was like, oh my gosh, they got to do this for every kid. That,
Yeah.
and I get it now. The technology, I'm sure, has helped a lot. AI can
Yeah.
probably give you the basic structure, and then you just
Yeah.
change, the customize it. I would guess, but that's to me. That's and the fact that they have more. You guys have more freedom is
Yeah.
nice
Yeah.
because everything always seems so proscribed.
Mm.
Yeah.
As soon as somebody stopped watching me, I would go off schedule because I used to teach kids. And I mean, I taught for 7 years. This is to get my way through college.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
I enjoyed the kids the most
Yeah.
because they picked it up and all you had to do is trick them into studying with I used games. I just
Yeah.
played
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, right? And
Yeah.
adults were much more challenging and not as I don't know,
Yeah.
intense,
Yeah.
right? Because you're an adult. But
Yeah.
anyway, just a couple
Yeah.
comments I wanted to make.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
It's definitely because. Oh, sorry.
no, just I wanted to say, that my memories, even though, my daughter was in nursery school a while back, they're still very fresh because at that time I compared them to my memories of the time when I was in nursery school. And sorry to say, many people don't have memories, but I do remember quite a lot of things from that time. And I know for sure that back home, when I was in kindergarten and before that, the nursery or daycare center for kids, there were no rerakutechu, techo, sorry, and
Mm. Yeah.
rakutecho. Basically, that book which was here in Japan even before the apps. So,
Yeah.
so the parents back home didn't know what was going on, during the day, with the exception when the teacher was just had a little bit of time to tell the parent, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But here in Japan, it has been the practice even before the apps, and I really appreciate how they do gave those reports to every
Yeah.
parent. And I'm glad that now, basically, those reports have probably become a little bit more detailed too. And at the same time, the technology is giving more time to the teachers to actually
Yes.
interact with the kids and, do other stuff, which is also beneficial to the kids they take care of during the day. So,
Yeah, it's definitely very helpful. Like in my school and a lot of other schools now, we'll have like a tablet in every classroom so
mhm,
teachers have easy access. So just in my school, we have like 4 computers and like 12 iPads. So even if you've got like a class of like 12 one-year olds,
mhm,
one teacher doesn't have to do all 12 kids because we can share it out between 3 teachers. Okay, everyone
Gotcha.
can just do 4 kids each, and it really reduces that time. Especially, I couldn't imagine having to write with a pen. The
Oh, yeah.
writing would get messy. You wouldn't be able to read what it said.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
would get a bit out of control. Yeah.
Right. I also remember, though, and I believe that it probably hasn't changed, that,
Hmm.
well, parents do need to prepare different things and take them to the nursery school so that they can make, the time of their child in the nursery school as comfortable as possible. And
Yeah.
what are those things? Especially, I know that every school actually has a list of different things, right, to
Yeah.
be taken there. But in general, what is that? What do parents need to know about that?
Yeah. Luckily, this is another area for the parents that has got much better over the recent years. Like it used to be the case where parents would have to sew name labels into everything, like every single piece of clothing they had, whether it be the hat, each sock, underwear, they would have to sew name labels into everything, bed sheets and stuff like that. Because depending on the school, obviously they nap until they graduate. So you would have your bed sheets, and you would have to sew the elastic straps which can hook over the beds, or you would have to sew their names in. You would have to maybe put their names on every single diaper that the kid has, like whether it
Right.
be with pen or with a stamp. In a nursery, those are kind of the big ones nowadays. But even now, there's a lot of nurseries that have changed to like subscriptions. So, for example, a diaper company will just bring diapers, and parents just pay maybe 1,000 or 2,000 yen a month, and we can just use as many diapers as they need,
Mm.
and the parents don't have to bring anything. I know that in the news it's become like some cities require, some schools require parents to take the used diapers home. Luckily, that's disappearing a lot as well. But also, even the bed sheets now, there's a subscription where a company will just bring the bed sheets on Monday, and then on Friday you just put them all in bags and then throw them back in the truck, and they'll clean them and bring them back again on Monday. I got a phone call yesterday from a cold calling like sales company of, we have these, like, we can make clothes sets for each kid for you, so parents don't even have to bring changes of clothes anymore. They can just bring like different sizes of uniforms for each kid. It luckily, especially in Tokyo, I think maybe Tokyo, Chiba area, the Kanto area, big cities, a lot
Mhm.
of these systems might become a lot more automated, where we've just got different, because a lot of the systems as well, the city office will just give us the money for in return anyway, if it's to help the parents.
I
Right.
feel I feel a little bit like the circle of life because when I was a kid, my younger brothers and sisters were like my youngest is 10 years younger than me. So I remember when she was born, I had to change her diapers, like the whole family pitched in, right? And back then, and I call this BP, before Pampers were invented.
Right.
And it was all the big cloth underwear, right?
Oh.
And they had these services that
Hmm.
you as a parent would pay, and they come and they pick up your dirty diapers, wash them, and they drop off new diapers. And I almost feel like we're going back to that's what everybody used to do, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
wow, yeah,
Talking,
that's interesting. Yeah.
talking about diapers, I for the very first time after my daughter was born, and we started buying those Pampers, right?
Yeah.
The paper diapers, the disposable ones. I For the very first time I realized how hard it must have been for our parents to take care of us. Because when we were kids, there were no paper diapers. Everything was
Right?
exactly
Cloth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
washed and ironed and then used again and again. And I know that for some people, they say, well, it is good for the environment. I'm not so sure, because when you wash those diapers, you use a lot of detergent, you then use a lot of energy to iron them, to disinfect them, and so on and so on. But I was just so appreciative of what those our parents did, because it saved so much work, right? You just use the
Yeah.
diaper for our kids and dispose of it, and then it goes to the incinerator and so on. Oh, it makes life so much easier. And
Yeah,
especially,
luckily I've never even seen a cloth diaper before, so I'm lucky that I skipped that stage.
I'm aging myself, okay? And I'll share this with the listeners. This is a very embarrassing story about me and diapers. So these diapers were like really long, and then they would be folded
mhm.
into to be small enough, to absorb, everything. And so I remember I just outgrew. I was probably 4 or 5, and I wanted a Superman suit, but I had to wait for Christmas. So I improvised. I used to tie a diaper. That was my cape. I was like diaper man, and later people started making fun of me, like they're calling me diaper man. So that was one of my traumatic childhood memories with diapers.
Oh, I'm so sorry to hear that, Tim.
I'm still scarred, but anyways.
Well, but if you don't mind me just moving on to yet another topic which I really love talking about when it comes to nursery schools and everything is that I have mentioned this before. So I had to go back to work soon, not so soon, but 1 year after my daughter was born. So in Japan, you basically, by law, you are allowed to use that 1 year, and
Mm.
many companies actually give it to you as a mother, right? Some companies don't, but that's a different story. And then my company gave me, that 1 year of what's that maternity leave to
Yeah.
use. But still, because my daughter was born in August, so she had to go to start going to the nursery school
Right.
in April, because
Right.
that's when the school year starts, and then they wouldn't keep her, the vacancy until the end of August for her. So we had to send her earlier. She was, what, 7 months old when she started going there, and I felt very guilty for that because she was
Mm.
not even a toddler, still a
Yeah.
baby.
Yeah.
And I also was like, I read a lot of books, and in all those books, it was written that the kids, the child should stay with the mother until the age of 3. I didn't have a choice, so that's, where the guilt came from. But then, the moment my daughter started going to nursery school, of course, I cried all the way through, the first week and so on and so on. But after the second week, I started noticing that she was becoming so much more confident gradually, day by day. And she stopped crying when I said to her bye bye in the morning, leaving her at the
Mm.
nursery school. And she actually, start, I don't know, socializing much better,
Sure.
uh,
Sure.
as she continued going to the school. And I thought, it's so much easier because the teachers there, they're professionals.
They
They're
are
Yeah.
so professional.
Yes,
Yes,
they're
I
trained
agree.
to take care of the kids there. And my sense of guilt, that feeling of guilt, actually disappeared with time.
Yeah, and we talked about this right before we came on.
Yes,
I
yes.
had exactly the same experience, except with my granddaughter. I mentioned to Jake that when she went from a very young age, it may have been before 7 months. I don't remember whatever that cutoff
Mhm.
date is, but that's when they put her in. And I'm like, yeah, shouldn't they stay home, and preferably the mother, but also it could be the father. I'm
Yeah.
open minded.
Yeah. Mm.
And same feeling as you had, Maya. And then I just started seeing her like once a month, right? Because they're in Tokyo, we're in Atami, right? But I just saw her growth and her, like you said, confidence. Like
Mhm.
she would look me in the eye, greet me, engage with me, and even now she's very friendly. She's not shy. And now I really believe, because both parents, my son and my daughter-in-law, they spend time with her when she's back. They spend a lot of time with her, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So they found that really nice balance, and they're both professionals, so they're busy too, but they found a nice balance. And so I changed my opinion of sending kids to nursery schools early because I saw my granddaughter grow so
Yeah.
Yeah.
quickly. So
Yeah.
hats off to you guys. You are very professional.
Yes. And to the point, Jake, that you mentioned earlier, so that many people think or used to think that, well, basically, nursery school teachers are just taking care of the kids, maybe changing diapers and doing this and that. It's not the case, right? So
Yeah.
you can tell us more about that, because I'm sure that there is so much more to that, and
Yeah.
what you do.
Yeah.
And
It's surprisingly a lot of planning does go into every day of the school because, especially when you've got so many kids, you want to make sure that they're all, first of all, having fun, but they do have to develop as children, right? So, socialization is one of the great things about nurseries, not just within their class, but there's a thing which is called Godo Hoiku, which is mixing the ages
Mhm.
together. So it's quite normal that in
Nice.
my school, depending on the time of day, the zero, ones, and twos will all be together. So in the evening, when one of the parents comes to pick up, one of the kids from maybe the 2-year-old class will be like, "Ah, your mum's here," into one of the babies. She'll be like, "Your mum's here. Come on, your mum's here," or something like that. They become not just social with the other kids, but with the other parents as well. Because I think,
Mm.
especially nowadays, especially during and after COVID, parents having friends with kids and
Mm.
finding time to socialize and finding socialization opportunities for kids has become very tough, I think. We're lucky here in Chiba that we have a lot of parks, we have a lot of play spaces, but I think in more urban areas, it might be much more difficult to find those opportunities for socialization. So yeah, the socialization part is great. The development, we have something which is called like the Hatatsu Dankai, which is by 4 months they need to do this, by 6 months they need to do this, by a year. So when we do crafts and activities and games, we have to really think about, okay, it might be nice to draw a picture, but that's not going to help them develop. So you might notice, people listening might notice, oh, we've got papers that just have stickers stuck to them, and that's the craft that they've done today. But the aim for that is they've got to, use their fingers to peel things off,
Right.
stick
All
things
right.
on, choose different
Dexterity.
colors.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
so a lot of it is their finger play, and you'll notice Japan has the teasobi, a lot of different finger plays, and you have to think about developing their fingers, their speech, climbing, jumping. Like there's sometimes we'll get a 2-year-old who can't jump, so we have to figure out what activity we're going to do today to teach them to jump.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So, hey, I think this is a good time. Thank you. It is time for a quick commercial break, right, Maya? And then we'll get back. I wanted to get back to the
yeah.
mixing grades when we come back on the other side.
Yes. Yeah.
Go
Yes.
ahead, Maya.
Okay. Thank you, Tim, and thank
Our
you,
great
Jake.
sponsor.
Yes. A big thank you to our other sponsor, Houze Inc. and Hana Urushisawa Howell. So you
Shout out
already
to
know,
Hannah.
and yes, our friend Hana, of course. Then Houze again offers bilingual services to both Japanese and foreign residents in Japan, and the company does custom home design, construction, and renovations, plus commercial building construction. And in order for you to be able to benefit from all their services and customization and everything else, the bilingual communication, so please contact Hana Urushizawa Howell on LinkedIn, and you can also go to the website of the company Houze Inc. Also, in addition to this, you will find the contact details in the description of the YouTube video, so do not hesitate to do that. Click on that more icon and go there and check the contact details, reach out to Hannah and work with them. Thank you. And yes, Jake,
Yeah.
we've got so many other things to talk about. Tim, I will let you go.
Yeah, no, I just, you
Because I
mentioned like
also-
mixing the grades,
Mhm.
Yeah,
right? And whatever the culture is, there's like a lot of value in that. If
yeah,
it's, the first preschool my granddaughter went to was Japanese, so everything was in Japanese. So that introduces the one-san,
yeah,
oni-san, and the senpai kohai. But one of the things I loved about it was watching, I didn't see it, but my daughter-in-law saw it when she used to, go to class. The older children being very kind and helpful toward the
yeah,
younger kids, and then watching my granddaughter do the same as she got older and helping the little ones. Like there's something very beautiful about those interactions at different
yeah.
grades. So I really do like that you brought that up because it's something
Yeah.
I would never thought of the importance, but it's very important and it's very heartwarming as well, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, it is. It's something actually that I think maybe a lot of parents don't understand at first because one of the other schools in my company got a complaint from a parent to say, "Oh, you're always mixing the classes together. Does that mean you don't have enough teachers? Are you just being
Yeah,
lazy?"
yeah,
And it's like, well, actually, maybe sometimes if some teachers are sick, we might have to mix some classes together to make sure we see everyone safely. But there really are a lot of benefits for example, a 2-year old who is maybe playing with a 1-year old, and the 2-year old needs to understand, 1-year olds can't understand yet, or they can't speak yet. So they might have taken your toy, but it's not because they're trying to steal you. They don't know how to
Mm.
communicate and stuff like that. And especially when we get our 5, 6-year olds, we like to take them downstairs during
Yeah.
lunchtime and help us with the babies with the lunch because they can kind of see, like, this is what you were like when you were a baby. Like, you have to understand, like, you have to be slow, you have to be careful. If they say no, it's, babies sometimes just don't understand. It's a good way to really teach
right.
Yeah.
kids about
Yeah,
how to interact, how to understand, and maybe sometimes, even if they don't like something, it's like, oh, it's not anybody's fault. It's just that's how it is.
yeah,
Yeah.
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 I remember seeing actually my daughter becoming more or maybe acquiring this sense of responsibility when she was, 5 years old at the nursery, because they do, just as you said, take
Yeah.
the kids down to the first floor and let them see and interact with the toddlers and so on. And I
Mm.
also saw my daughter, but also her friends, how they acquire this sense of responsibility of looking out for the younger ones when they play outside. And it
Yeah.
was funny because sometimes those girls, the 5-year-old girls, they would say, "Oh, no, 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 you shouldn't do that. Come here, come here.
Mm.
That's dangerous for you to be there." And it's funny because
Yeah.
it's not very normal back home to see a 5-year-old kid feel responsible for the safety of younger ones, right? And maybe
Mm.
that's, we don't really teach them that. And I mean, back home in Bulgaria. So
Yeah.
things may change, but I don't remember, being actually um, in such situations where I could watch over younger kids.
Yeah. I think another part of it, yeah, with the going outside as well, we make our 5, 6-year olds hold hands with the 3-year olds when they're walking to the park. And that
Mhm.
makes the older kids feel like, oh, the safety is my responsibility as well. Of course, the teachers are there on the side to make sure that nothing's happening, but they're like, okay, we cannot get tempted to, start swinging our arms about or wander off. Like, we are responsible for making sure this kid not only is safe but doesn't copy our bad behavior. And they teach each other language, they teach other words, because the teacher, when they learn things like, when they're playing with toys, the teacher isn't teaching them every individual toy or word. They're learning it from each other. And the older kids, sometimes they learn bad words as well, but didn't we all? That's just part of uh, kids talking to each other as well.
Just an observation from someone who came from a big family. So there were
Mm.
7 in our family, and again, there were big separations, right, in age.
Yeah.
So, as someone from a big family, Irish Catholic, um, it's kind of baked into family life to learn to take care of younger kids
Mm.
or to deal with an elder sibling if you're in the middle, right? Like I was number
Yeah.
3, right? But now families are so small,
Mm.
sometimes one child,
Yeah.
that they don't have that. In case of my granddaughter, right now she's the only child. She doesn't have that experience, so it's really great to see
Yeah.
her get that at school. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I th- I think on your point there as well about the bigger families, I think another big difference with families, especially in England, is that you can't, in England we can't really ask grandparents to take care of the grandkids because they're like, no, I want to, it's your kid. I took care of you. You take care of your kid. Whereas
We'll
in
come and
Japan,
spoil them and then leave. We'll do that.
yeah,
Mm.
exactly. Yeah. Whereas it's quite common in Japan where, especially, in Japan, the working hours are typically an hour longer than in England. Like usually it's 7 hours plus a lunch, or in Japan it's 8 hours plus a lunch
Yeah.
plus overtime. So including like trains. So it's quite common that grandparents will pick up kids and
And they
take them
live
home.
forever here. They don't die young. All my grandparents were dead by the age of 5.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the other thing that happens. But you're right. That from a cultural
Yeah.
Yeah.
point of view, the grandparents can lean on them. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, to this point, we have a comment on LinkedIn from Shinjin Wolf. He writes, the development of social skills early on have proven to provide a better chance for future success in the real world, a sentiment shared also by Dr. Jordan Peterson. So, yeah, it seems, I mean, from my personal observations, I apologize for this stumbling. I mean, on my daughter, yes, it's definitely something that has been hugely underestimated until recently, I believe. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
really,
that's that socialization. I agree. I think it's underrated in our culture, and I'm
yeah.
seeing it with my own eyes.
Hmm.
The other
Yeah.
thing, Jake, you mentioned was, we don't show them how, you don't show kids how to do everything, right? Like
Yeah.
they gotta. That's part of it, the exploration.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I wish I could remember where I heard this, but it was a really interesting, very short story. There's this box that is very difficult to open. It's kind of like a puzzle. There's a certain way to open the box, right? And they
Yeah.
found that if they gave the box to adults, they couldn't. It took them longer to figure out than if they gave it to kids, because the
Yeah.
kids had no rules or what parameters in their head, so
Yeah.
nothing
Yeah.
stopped them from like throwing it up in the air, letting it crash down. Like they were free to explore, and they figured it out faster than the adults. I don't know if you ever heard that,
Yeah.
but that's the value of exploration. So
Yeah.
any thoughts on that?
Actually, so that's one of the great things about nurseries that I was going to talk about next as well is that
Good.
the exploration aspect, and it's also actually maybe not a negative within nurseries, but I think nurseries in Japan have been given this freedom and exploration aspect. But unfortunately, once they get to elementary school, it stops.
The hammer comes
And
down.
Mm.
and I think I don't know if that's something that's going to change because I've noticed because a lot of the students in my school, once they go to elementary school, they still come back to my school for extra lessons, English lessons, and do stuff like that. So I've noticed that elementary schools have got kinder, but they do go from playing all day, not necessarily having a lot of rules, to sit at your single desk for 6 7 hours a day. It is a huge change that I'm not sure what the long-term impact. I don't know if that freedom will just and that desire to explore and learn will decrease, but
Yeah,
it
yeah.
is quite a culture shock. I think that they do get to play with all these toys, they get to do all of these crafts because your kindergartens are typically more study focused. So the continuation is a bit more natural. So I
Mhm.
think we might end up seeing in the next few years within Japanese elementary schools. Now I know all elementary schools have to use tablets and computers and stuff like that. So there might be a knock-on effect within Japanese educational, hopefully, overall. Because yeah, like one big difference that I wanted to talk about is in England, kids cannot get hurt. Like if a kid gets hurt, it's the end of the world. Like, playgrounds in England are just empty spaces. You might get a few balls, you can draw hopscotch on the ground, but you cannot have a climbing frame because if they fall off and get hurt, the parents are
Yeah,
going to
the
kick
monkey
off.
bars are no longer acceptable. Yeah,
Yeah,
lawsuits, right?
exactly. Whereas here in Japan, like my daughter's school is next to like just a big open space where they climb trees and they're running down
Oh yeah.
muddy slopes. They do swimming. They have pools in the summer. Like I couldn't imagine in England a school putting a kid in a pool because they were like, if my kid's face gets too wet, I'm going to kick off. Like my
Oh,
brother's a teacher and he's had parents threaten to punch him just for telling the parents that they had a nosebleed that day. So it's in Japan still at the moment at least you've got the tetsubo where you can flip on
yeah.
the bar. We've got climbing frames. They can play on swings in the daytime when they go to the park. If they fall and scratch their knee, and parents are always very understanding about it as well.
I know. Yeah, they let kids be kids, and
Mhm.
right when my kids would scrape their knee, my wife would be like, "Scotty Shiro," like
Yeah.
walk it off, kid. It's a long way from
Yeah.
your heart. That's my wife, the
Yeah.
football coach, right?
Yeah.
And I feel it used to be that way my generation in the U.S. And then
Yeah.
right, just as you said, I think lawsuits we've sanitized playing
Mhm.
and taken all the risk out of it. And
Yeah.
I agree with you. I love that about Japan.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also as you said, the shock of going from this totally free, do what
Yeah.
you want life to boom,
Yeah.
the hammer comes down.
Yeah.
I hope I hope it changes. I think there may be a slow movement, but when I was teaching, here's my biggest point of struggle. This is the 1980s, so take it for what it's worth. But I had this philosophy that if the kids are having fun, I can trick them into learning and they will retain it. So, for
Yeah.
example, if you're trying to do repetition, right, that you need, we'd play Go Fish. And they'd say 100 times, "Do you have a yes, I do, no, I don't, here you are, thank you, you're welcome." And then I'd introduce verbs into cards mix. And so I was training them to talk. And some parents were against it because they're having fun. Learning can't be fun.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think that's where the shift has to come,
Mhm.
in my opinion.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, but I was actually, because my daughter needed to change kindergartens. Like, no, actually, it's nursery school, Hoikuen,
Yeah.
because the first one she went to, they would have the kids only until they were 2 years old, and then we had
Oh
to
yeah.
find another one, right? And then so because when she started at the second one, and they were very focused on playing. They would just let the kids, play all day long, and I was like, wow, they're getting older, the kids are getting older and they don't have any learning activities the way I know them. And so sorry, I was uneducated, okay. And
Mm.
then we talked with the principal of the school, of the Hoikuen, and she said, don't worry, basically we let them learn through play. And so I needed a little bit of time, to just appreciate that. But after 2 or 3 months, I actually saw the development, how my daughter was growing. And I thought, okay, it was like that aha moment for me, that kids actually learn through play, and you cannot sit them down and wait for them to learn something without involving all their senses, uh, you know,
Yeah.
uh, all their bodies and brains and everything at the same time. So that was really a huge revelation for me. But
Yeah, I think especially being on the educator side of things, I think we've all experienced as well of we see things differently when we're on the other side. And I remember we had a new teacher. He was an English teacher who was coming to my school, hadn't worked in necessarily like young age education before. And we were playing musical chairs, which maybe when we grew up and stuff, it was just a fun game to play. But on the other side of it, when you're watching it, it's like, yeah, they need to learn rules, they need to learn rhythm, they need to learn pacing. If two of them sit on this chair at the same time, like he would be tempted to be like, oh no, no, he sat there first, or do rock, paper, scissors. Like, no, no, just stand back, let them see if they can work it out themselves first. Like,
yeah,
just watch them, see what they do, because they might just give
Gotcha.
up the chair on their own. They might decide themselves. All the other kids might say, no, no, it was him. Like, you just take a step back, And it's the same with fighting as well. Like if a kid starts like pulling a toy, that I think a lot of teachers who are, especially because a lot of English teachers work as just an English teacher in a nursery, so they
Right.
just have that English teacher mindset. Would be quick to like stop the fight. It's like, no, no, just let them pull
Let
at
them
it
work
for
it
a
out.
second.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
might just discuss between themselves who touched it first. They might decide, okay, I'll play with it and then give it to you. Like I think just observing the kids as well, they have to
Yeah.
learn themselves. Okay, we
Yeah.
have to follow this rule, or we teach each other the rule. How can we overcome these problems without? And I think this is something that I really felt in England. Teachers are too fast to just get the problem done and
Yeah.
just move on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's funny
You
you
know,
mentioned musical chairs because I don't
yes.
know if you were looking at the comments, Jake. There was a
Yeah.
comment about musical chairs before you
Oh, really?
talked about.
I hadn't seen it. No.
It's from Seiichiro Manabe-san, and then he writes musical chairs and gacha need to be played by the parents, not the kids.
You got to chase after the kids, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So
Yeah.
Jake, I don't know what you have planned for the rest of it. If you don't have anything planned, I was interested in your
Hmm.
post. I don't know if it was today or yesterday, but
Oh, yesterday. Yeah.
and
Yes.
it was really interesting because it resonated. I mean, you mentioned your first mistake in
Mm.
trying to change things too quickly, and you kind of skipped over the relationship building part, which I that's exactly what I did when I ran a factory, right?
Yeah.
And so did if you have time today, I'd
Yeah,
like
of
to hear a
course.
little bit about that. If not, we can bring it back, in the future.
Yes.
But it's up to you. What's I don't know what's on your agenda for the rest.
No, yeah, I'm perfectly fine. I think it'll perfectly fit into the last part as well. So, of
Cool.
course, I work in an international preschool, and at that time, we had teachers, obviously from Japan, but America, England, the Philippines, China, and there was a teacher from Cuba as well at that time. And the school that I came from when I first joined Milky Way was almost all Japanese because it was a public school, a Ninka school. So it was almost all Japanese and then just two English teachers. Whereas now, because the school that I'm in is a Ninka Guy, it's an international school, it's it's maybe 60% Japanese and then 40% foreign. So there's a lot more. And then the Japanese teachers have all like, studied abroad in Australia
Right.
or lived in another country. We've got one Japanese nurse who lived in America for a long time, and you would have thought she was more Californian than she was Japanese. So when I walked into the school, I had this image of, what I'd experienced in the public nurseries. And I thought, okay, I need to make this school more like a public school, like a bit more, a bit, not more paperwork, but a bit more structure and rules. Because whereas the public schools, they have a lot of checks from the city office. They have a lot more things they have to check off to get their subsidiary money, whereas a private school is a bit more free. So I thought maybe they had a lot of freedom, and maybe that freedom had led to a bit of falling out. And I thought, okay, I need to come in and make not make some rules, but maybe change some rules that I thought would be beneficial for the teachers,
Mm-hmm.
maybe in regards to break times or in regards to writing the diaries or lesson planning. I thought, okay, if I came in and I made the curriculum for them, that would save a lot of time on the lesson planning. But then it was like, no, but now I've been able to teach how I wanted for so long. And now I just have to follow your curriculum. I was like, that's not what I had in mind. Like, I
Right.
thought I would be saving you the time for the lesson planning. But because they'd been there longer than me, and they were used to having like, oh, I want to teach this, I want to teach this. They were not happy about that. Or when I made a break time rota, so that people could take their 1 hour every day. Then they were like, oh, I've always taken breaks first because I start earlier. And
Right.
it's kind of like, I should have spent more time maybe speaking to everyone as a group, not changed anything for a few months just to see, how they've worked together, what they've done until now. and then together thought of some ideas of what we can change rather than my intention was I wanted to give them a better working experience, more time to less time preparation, more time enjoying the work, but maybe stepping a little bit too much on the parts that they had been doing. Even if it took a lot of effort and time, they had put a lot of passion into that part of the work that I might
Yeah.
have been taking away unintentionally. Yeah.
Yeah, it happens sometimes our intentions of doing good are not basically they resonate in a different way, as you
Yeah.
say, and we should be very careful, mindful of that. So, listening, really listening to understand is so very important.
Yeah, I think it was a bit because I think the main aspect as well, because it's an international environment, typically the Japanese staff will just follow. If you tell them we're going to do this, even if they don't think it's going to work, they'll be like, okay, we'll do it. Whereas, it was my first time saying something. I said directly to his teacher, let's do this. And they're like, no, I'm not going to do it. And I'm like, oh, like you're not even gonna try it? And it's like, no, I'm not. I don't think it'll work, so I'm not gonna do it.
Mm,
So how I explain things or how I present things, it was my learning experience of being like, okay, I need to think of each individual teacher culturally as well. Like, those are big difference. Even between English teachers and American teachers, there's still a lot of cultural differences there of
Yeah.
especially when it comes to telling you how it is.
yeah,
British teachers are much more sarcastic, maybe are more likely to say what they're thinking in a funnier tone, but you're like, you actually mean that, don't you?
right.
So getting through all of those, it took a long time and a lot of, like, can I do this? But it's been 5 years, and we have a really great relationship together.
Right.
We're the only school within my company that doesn't have a turnover each year. Like, we managed to maintain the staff. It's a really fun place to be, if I do say so myself.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah.
I look back at my own mistakes and I think, what would I do differently? Like if I could
Yeah,
rewind the tape,
Hmm.
what would I do differently? And I've told myself this many times. I would have met with as many people as I could one on one, mostly listened and found
mm,
out what their pain points were. And
yeah,
if I could help them, like I would have put off my changes and I
Mm,
would have,
yeah,
done the nemawashi, as the Japanese say. I would have laid the groundwork through these relationships and try to build some trust
yeah,
because you're much better off, you know, like listening, and it
yeah,
usually changes your point of view. Like something you may have thought would work, and you listen to people, and you're like, oh, maybe that won't work. Um, I think, I should have gone into it with more humility, and I should
yeah,
have been more patient and taken more time to lay the groundwork rather than going in. And I wasn't even dealing with Japanese. I was dealing with mostly Americans in management, but a labor force from 12 different countries,
yeah,
working on the floor. So I had to balance this, and again, I wish I could do it over, but I resonate.
yeah,
That's why your post resonated. So
yeah.
that's what I would do differently, at least in my brain, if I could do it all over again.
mm,
I think the last
yeah.
thing, the great thing about management within a nursery is it's very personal.
Yeah,
So you are literally together. Or I mean, in an office, you're obviously sharing the same space, but you might be
right.
looking at the computer, you might be on the phone. With a nursery, if it goes well, it can be an amazing, fun, exciting place to work. You might see on the news sometimes that, I think especially in the past few months, teachers kind of hitting kids, abusing kids.
Yeah,
And I've seen firsthand that when a principal is not taking care of their staff, like, of course, never hit a kid. But I have seen some teachers get into absolutely panic and mentally dark places because they get forced to take care of a class too big with no support. They get forced to do a lot of paperwork at home. they get cut because nurseries are open on Saturdays, and sometimes they have to come 6 days a week. And I can really understand when it's, when you're looking at the kids as well, you can't just be like, I hate this place. I hate this place. You have to put on that smile. You have to hide what you're feeling. If you've had a bad morning, you have to just pretend it hasn't happened because the kids are there. And I can really feel that if a nursery school is bad, it can be an absolute like well of chaos mentally for people. And I know there used to be stories about teachers weren't allowed to have their own kids because if they took maternity leave, well, everyone else has to work harder. But now it's become much better where city offices pay money for other teachers to come in and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there have been improvements, which is great, really, because I think that thinking about the demographic changes here and how much parents do need to work, and also the needs kids and this and that. So there's a lot of things that they needed to be done, and I'm happy to see that many of the changes are positive. They have gone in positive direction. So it's not just we have to do this and that, and nothing's being done. So definitely there are improvements, and hopefully these improvements will continue, because Japan is what it is. It's good at improving things incrementally. So
I hope they the only one thing that I'm worried about now is because obviously Kishida, the prime minister, is leaving soon. And actually all nursery, I think not many people know this, but all nursery schools at the moment, they get a special 10,000 yen pay rise, which we nicknamed the Kishida Teate, which when Kishida came into power, he did increase all nursery teachers' salaries. So we're just worried, like, once it changes again, are they going to take are our salaries going to go down? But but there has been a ton of improvements, and I can't really think of any negatives. More focus on safety, which can be tough for preparation, but it's good for the kids. But it's become a much more secure, career focused as well, becoming principals, vice principals, sub leaders and stuff. It gives a lot of people more growth opportunities too.
Well, which is important for motivation. I mean, motivating people to stay in this field and use their experience is very important for the field. I mean, the improvements that are being made and so on and so on. Well, I'm glad to hear that, because it used to be an area where people, when I say people, the teachers didn't see much opportunities for growth. And so it actually made them stay there just for the short term until they found other jobs, in better paid jobs and jobs with better growth perspectives and so on and so on. So, great, really great.
Yeah.
Well,
you opened my mind. This is great. I hope you'll come back again. I enjoyed it because it was very relevant to my life, and hopefully our listeners feel the same way. Yeah.
Well, I very much hope. I very much hope that you have time to join us as a speaker again in the near future, because there are a lot of other things I believe that many people would love to know. And since there are improvements and changes, it's good to keep your finger on the pulse of all this. So if you have time, please do join us again. Yes,
I would be
Thank
more
you
than
so
happy
much,
to.
Jake.
Yeah, thank you.
And Maya, you're gonna bring us out with a word from our sponsors.
A word from our sponsors.
Yeah.
And for our sponsors, yes, Kanagawa Chuo Jutaku or Kanchu.com with James, and Houze Inc. with Hannah. So these two companies, they have been here for around 40 years already, and they have a long experience in the field of buying and selling real estate in Tokyo and Yokohama, property management, also investment property, custom home design and construction, renovations, and commercial building construction. So please do reach out to them if you have in mind any projects in these fields. because James and Hannah are your people. If you're based in Kanto, do not hesitate to work with them. Thanks a lot, of course, to both of them. And thank you, Jake, for being with us today,
Thank you,
for
everyone.
letting. Yes, thank you, everyone. Tim, yes, thank you for sharing the experiences of your granddaughter and with her. And also to everybody who stayed with us. We'll be here once again on Sunday and next Wednesday again. So be with us. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.